The galaxy had many stories about dangerous worlds, but most of them were just myths to scare children. When aliens spoke of Earth, they laughed and called it a wild place full of storms and beasts, but nothing worth fearing. To them, humans were a young species still learning, still soft. Some even called them harmless. But whispers spread from traitors who had seen the fire in human eyes when they fought. They warned that Earth was not like other worlds. Still, the great council of alien empires ignored those voices. They thought they understood the limits of humans. They were wrong. It began with a small incident near Mars. A patrol fleet of aliens, the Varix Dominion, crossed into human space. They claimed it was a mistake, but their ships did not leave. Instead, they seized a human outpost, a mining station with a few hundred workers. The humans sent diplomats first. Messages of peace were broadcast again and again. The Varix commanders laughed at the soft words. They wanted to test the humans and see if their reputation was true. For days, Earth waited for a reply, hoping. For a reason, none came. Inside the captured outpost, fear grew. Families were separated. Guards walked the halls with weapons ready. The humans inside prayed for rescue, but still, Earth's leaders spoke of diplomacy. Across the planet, soldiers prepared quietly, watching their leaders hold back. Some asked why humans were so patient. Some whispered that perhaps the old fire of Earth had died. But in the dark chambers of government, generals and admirals met in silence. They remembered the history of their kind, wars that had torn nations. Apart struggles that had built steel hearts. They knew what would happen if the Varix crossed one line too far. The line was crossed without warning. A transmission was sent to Earth, showing the outpost in flames. Hundreds of civilians, men, women, and children, had been executed as a lesson. The Varix commander called it necessary to teach humans their place. That single act lit a fire that no one could put out. The streets of Earth erupted in anger. People who had begged for peace now cried for war. Factories began to roar with new orders. Fleets were prepared. Soldiers volunteered without hesitation. Every heart that once longed for calm now beat with fury. The alien council that had mocked Earth soon received reports of movement. Human warships, silent for years, were suddenly active. Satellites showed factories burning through the night. Entire populations demanded revenge. It was no longer about diplomacy, no longer about defense. Humanity had been struck, and now it would. Strike back harder than anyone imagined. In the war rooms of Earth, a single meeting decided the future. The leaders sat around the table, their faces cold and silent. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, an old general, scarred from past wars, leaned forward. His voice was quiet but sharp. He said only 3 words. Mercy is over. Those words spread. Through every corner of the human military, soldiers repeated them, workers whispered them, families carved them into the walls of their homes. Humanity was no longer asking, no longer waiting. The age of patience had ended. The Varix had awakened something ancient, something dangerous, something the galaxy had forgotten. The first spark had been lit, and the fire was spreading. Somewhere. In the darkness of space, the Varix celebrated their victory, unaware that Earth was already moving. They believed they had broken human spirit. They did not see that they had created something far worse. What came next would change the galaxy. Forever. Humans were done being soft. Now they would show what happened when you turned a death world against you. The galaxy thought humans had limits. They believed Earth would protest, maybe send a small fleet, then fall back into silence. That was how most young species behaved. But the aliens who thought this did not understand the human heart once it was wounded. The massacre at the outpost was not forgotten. It became a wound that bled across every nation of Earth, a wound that turned to rage. The words mercy is over echoed everywhere. Soldiers painted them on their armor, workers scratched them into steel as they built new ships. Children repeated them like a prayer. Factories across Earth and its colonies came alive. Smoke filled the skies as machines worked day and night. Old blueprints, long locked away, were reopened. Designs for warships meant for past wars were pulled out, studied, and rebuilt with new technology. Missiles larger than houses were prepared, and railguns that could tear ships apart were mounted on fresh hulls. The Variks thought humans were behind in weapons, but they did not know the hidden power of Earth's industry. Humanity had never stopped preparing. It had only been waiting. On Mars, training camps filled with new recruits. Men and women who once mined the soil now carried rifles. Farmers from Earth's fields became soldiers overnight. There was no need for force. Volunteers stood in lines stretching across entire cities. They did not come for money or glory. They came for revenge. Every one of them carried the faces of the dead in their minds. Every one of them remembered the flames of the outpost. The Variks had made a mistake. They thought fear would break humans, but it had made them unbreakable. In the council chambers of the great alien empires, news reports arrived daily. Spies sent word of endless human activity. The aliens laughed at first, calling it bluff and theater, but as weeks passed, their laughter faded. The scale of human mobilization shocked them. One Variks admiral spoke with confidence, claiming humans were weak and their technology outdated. He said no matter how many ships Earth built, they would be crushed by superior fleets. His words were meant to calm his people, but deep inside, fear was growing. The truth was visible to anyone watching the stars. Human fleets were gathering, not in secret, but in plain sight. Dozens of warships circled Earth, their weapons hot and ready. Drones flew in swarms around shipyards, welding steel, installing engines, preparing hulls. The humans were not hiding their wrath. They wanted the galaxy to see it. They wanted everyone to know that Earth had been awakened, and there would be no stopping what was coming. Across the colonies, speeches were given by commanders and leaders. They spoke not of peace, not of diplomacy, but of justice. They told their people that humanity would never again bow its head. If the Variks wanted to test them, they would pay a price that no empire could bear. Crowds roared with agreement, fists raised high, voices screaming for war. Humanity was uniting in a way the galaxy had never seen before. Old divisions between nations disappeared overnight. Rivals became allies, enemies became brothers. Earth was not a world of many countries anymore. It was one world, one people, with one mission. The Variks prepared their own strike, thinking to finish humans quickly. They sent a massive armada, larger than any fleet Earth had ever faced. They believed humans would scatter at the sight of such power. But what they found when they arrived at the edges of Sol System was not weakness, it was fire. Dozens of human warships were already waiting. Their formation was tight, their weapons aimed and glowing. For the first time in generations, Galaxy saw humans not as explorers or traders, but as warriors. The Variks commander who led the attack laughed as his fleet prepared to move in. To him, humans were still children holding sharpened sticks. But then the first human ship moved forward. It was a new kind of warship, built with technology the Variks did not expect. Its hull was covered in armor thicker than any they had seen, its weapons charged with energy that hummed like thunder. Behind it, more ships followed, each one prepared to fight without fear. Inside those ships, soldiers waited with calm faces. They were not afraid of dying. They were afraid of failing their people. Their commanders told them this was not just war. This was survival. This was vengeance. They carried with them the cries of the lost, and they would not stop until every Variks fleet was ash and dust. The galaxy had thought humans had limits. But as the first beams of light cut across the dark space, and as the first explosions shook the stars, it became clear those limits no longer existed. The chains had broken. Humanity was free from patience, free from restraint, and what came next would be remembered forever. The first great clash between humanity and the Variks Armada was nothing like the galaxy expected. The aliens believed it would be a short battle, a quick lesson that would put Earth back in its place. Their fleets were larger, their weapons polished. By centuries of war, their admirals proud and arrogant. But when the fighting began, they learned what it meant to awaken something that had slept too long. Humans did not fight like the rest of the galaxy. They fought with a hunger that could not be measured. They fought as if every shot carried the memory of their dead. The Varric ships formed wide battle lines, confident that their firepower would overwhelm. But humans did not stay in lines. They moved like hunters in the dark, their ships darting, weaving and striking with precision. The Varrics fired volleys from a distance. Humans closed in, willing to take damage if it meant delivering a killing blow. One Varric's battleship was rammed head-on by a smaller human cruiser. The collision tore both ships apart, but the explosion also wiped out 2 enemy escorts. The galaxy watched in shock. No one else threw away lives so easily yet to the humans. It was not madness, it was sacrifice. Every decision screamed of ruthlessness. Human captains ordered their crews to fight until the last breath. Some ships, too damaged to continue, turned themselves into weapons, igniting their cores and detonating. In the heart of enemy fleets, Marines launched boarding pods at speeds that shattered hulls. They climbed into alien ships and tore through corridors with fire and steel, caring nothing for surrender. Captured aliens begged for mercy, but the humans had already decided mercy no longer existed. The massacre at the outpost had erased that word from their hearts. Across the galaxy, live transmissions spread. Traders, spies, and distant observers broadcast the battle to any who would watch. Entire worlds saw human warships dive into fire without hesitation. They saw alien soldiers kneel and beg, only to be met with silence. They saw entire Varrics formations collapse not because of superior weapons, but because of the terrifying will of those who fought. The galaxy whispered in fear. These were not the patient, forgiving humans they thought they knew. These were something else. These were Deathworlders unleashed. On the bridge of a human flagship, Admiral Kerr stood like stone, his eyes fixed on the burning chaos of space. Every report that came in was cold. Every command he gave was colder. He had once argued for peace, for talks, for restraint. But that part of him had been buried with the civilians who died in the flames. Now he commanded with a single purpose: destroy the enemy completely. His officers followed without question. They knew the Admiral no longer cared for losses, cared only for victory. The Varrics fought back with all their strength. They unleashed heavy cannons, energy storms, and swarms of drones. Many human ships were lost, torn apart in the darkness. But for each ship that fell, 2 more pressed forward. Every Marine that died on alien decks, 5 more surged in behind them. The humans did not retreat, did not pause, did not flinch. The Varrics soon realized they were not fighting soldiers, they were fighting an entire species that had decided to make war its only purpose. In one brutal encounter, human destroyer was crippled and boarded by Varrics troops. Instead of surrendering, the captain ordered the self-destruct. The explosion consumed not only his ship, but half the boarding fleet around it. The story spread faster than the shockwave, and across both fleets the message was clear. Humans would rather die than be taken. Fear began to spread through the Varrics ranks. Their soldiers hesitated, their commanders faltered, and their ships began to drift apart. When the battle finally ended, the void was filled with wreckage. Human ships limped, scarred, and burning, but they remained. The Varrics fleet, once proud and confident, was shattered. Thousands of their soldiers floated lifeless among the ruins. The survivors who were captured faced a silence more terrifying than any weapon. They begged to be spared, but the humans did not answer. They simply locked them away, their faces cold. Their eyes filled with something the galaxy had not seen before. Across the stars, the news spread like wildfire. Humanity had not only fought back, they had fought without restraint, without pity, without fear. Other species shivered at the thought. If this was how humans answered a single massacre, what would they do if pushed further? The image of ramming ships, of burning fleets, of cold human eyes, refusing mercy, seared itself into galactic memory. The Varrics dominion, once proud, now faced a nightmare of their own making. They had thought to humble a young race. Instead, they had awakened a ruthless force that no empire could easily control. And somewhere in the shadows of space, as survivors drifted in silence, one alien captain whispered the truth to himself. We thought humans were weak. We were wrong. They're the storm. Whispers spread across the galaxy like fire on dry grass. Every corner, every station, every trade hub carried the same words: "Do not anger Earth." News of the battle had reached far beyond the Sol system, carried by terrified witnesses and silent transmissions. The galaxy had seen human warships ram into enemy fleets without hesitation. They had seen soldiers choose death over capture. They had seen prisoners beg for life and receive nothing but cold silence. The message was clear. Was no longer the patient, forgiving species many believed. Earth was something far more dangerous. In the grand halls of alien councils, panic grew. Leaders gathered in secret meetings, their voices trembling as they argued over what to do. Some shouted that they must ally with humans before it was too late, while others warned that standing beside Earth meant sharing its enemies. A few arrogant voices still claimed that humans could be stopped with larger fleets and stronger weapons. But even they spoke with unease. None of them could erase the image of human ships turning themselves into fire to destroy the Variks. The Variks dominion, once so proud, was reeling from its defeat. Entire fleets had been lost. Their admirals spoke with forced confidence, promising revenge, but their eyes betrayed fear. They had underestimated Earth, and now they faced the weight of their mistake. They scrambled to build more ships, to rally more soldiers, but their own people whispered in the streets. They whispered that the humans were coming, and nothing could stop them. Even in the highest towers of the Dominion, the words, "Mercy is," over, echoed like a curse. Meanwhile, humanity moved with purpose. Their fleets did not stay home to defend. They pushed forward. One by one, they hunted down every Varik ship that dared cross into space. Colonies that had once flown the Varik's banner now saw human warships in orbit. Marines stormed onto alien worlds with steel in their hearts. They moved like storms, striking hard and fast, leaving nothing for the enemy to rebuild. For the first time in history, humanity was not fighting to protect itself, it was fighting to punish. On one occupied planet, a Varik's governor prepared to surrender. He believed the humans would accept it, that perhaps mercy still existed somewhere deep in their hearts. He stood before human commanders, hands raised in submission. But the humans gave no answer. They moved past him, silent, their eyes filled. With a fire that was worse than anger, they did not take the governor's words. They did not listen to his begging. Instead, they tore down the flags of the Dominion and raised their own. To humanity, surrender was no longer enough. The enemy had crossed the line. Now every world would pay the price. Alien scholars and historians began to argue among themselves. They searched through records of Earth's past wars, through stories of nations that had once risen and fallen in fire. They pieced together a terrifying truth. Humanity had always carried this darkness. The galaxy had only seen its smile, its diplomacy, its curiosity for stars. The Bay had never seen its rage. Now that rage was awake, and it was spreading across the stars with every fleet that launched, with every colony that burned. For ordinary species watching from afar, fear became the new law. Traders avoided human space, afraid of even being mistaken. For allies of the Variks, some worlds sent desperate messages to Earth, promising friendship and trade. They did not want to fight. They only wanted to be ignored. Yet no one knew what humans wanted anymore. Did they seek only vengeance on the Variks, or did they now hunger for more? The uncertainty made the galaxy tremble. On Earth itself, the people did not rest. Phaketeri still thundered. Fleets still grew. Soldiers still trained. Families sent sons and daughters willingly, knowing they might never return. No one spoke of peace. No one asked for it. The words of the old general, "Mercy is over," had become law. Humanity was united like never before. Every heart burned with the same fire, and that fire showed no sign of fading. In the shadows of space, the Variks tried one final plan. They sent an envoy, a desperate attempt at peace. A single ship, carrying an ambassador, crossed into human territory. The envoy carried gifts, promises, and apologies. The humans intercepted it without a word. The ship was never seen again. Some say it was destroyed. Some say the ambassador was taken and never returned. Whatever the truth, one fact was clear. Earth was not listening anymore. Fear spread further, across distant galaxies. Leaders looked at their star maps and wondered what would happen if humanity's eyes turned toward them. Old rivalries were forgotten as entire species gathered in, secret to discuss survival. One thought haunted them all. If humans fought with such fury against one enemy, what would happen if they fought against everyone? Still the fleets of Earth moved forward? The galaxy could only watch as the ruthless awakening of humanity continued. The storm was not slowing down, was only growing stronger. The galaxy had thought humans were monsters already, but they had not yet seen the full truth. The first battles had only been the beginning. What came next was not survival, not defense, but something darker. It was the reckoning. Humanity no longer fought to protect itself or to chase enemies away. Now it fought to punish, to erase, to make sure no one would ever dare to test them again. Human fleets pushed deep into Varric's territory. They did not pause to occupy or to rule. They moved like fire across dry land, destroying everything in their path. Shipyards that once built proud Dominion fleets were turned into floating debris. Supply stations vanished in blasts that lit the void. Civilian colonies were not spared. Humans had lost their mercy, and in their eyes there was no difference between soldier and supporter. Anyone who wore the Varric's banner was marked. The galaxy watched in silence as entire worlds went dark. Alien leaders gathered in secret chambers. Horrified at the reports, they whispered that humanity had become too dangerous, that it was no longer just one empire's problem. Some suggested joining together to strike Earth before it grew stronger, but even as they spoke, fear gripped them. They had seen the way humans fought. They had seen how little they cared for their own survival, how easily they turned death into a weapon. To stand against such an enemy was to invite ruin. And so the councils hesitated, waiting, hoping the storm might burn itself out. On the ground, the reckoning was worse. Human marines landed on Varric's home colonies with cold precision. They did not come to capture, they came to destroy. Cities were bombed from orbit until nothing stood but ash. Streets filled with fire as human boots marched forward. Resistance was crushed within hours, defenders slaughtered without hesitation. Some aliens tried to surrender, raising flags, dropping weapons, kneeling before human soldiers. But the soldiers only walked past them, their eyes empty, their rifles still hot. Surrender no longer mattered. The only thing that mattered was erasure. Alien historians began writing in fear. They compared humanity not to other young races, but two storms, two plagues, two disasters that reshaped whole worlds. One wrote that humans were not fighting a war, they were performing a purge. Another said they were not soldiers, but executioners. Across the galaxy, these words spread like fire, filling ordinary citizens with dread. If Earth was willing to do this to the Varrics, what would they do to anyone else who stood in their way? Even within the Dominion, voices cried out for peace. Ordinary Varric civilians begged their leaders to stop the fighting, to kneel before Earth and beg forgiveness. But their leaders were proud, too proud to bend. They prepared their ultimate weapon instead, a massive war engine built over centuries, hidden in the heart of their empire. It was a ship the size of a city, armed with weapons that could shatter moons. They believed it was their only hope, the blade that would finally humble humanity. But humanity had prepared to. In secret, deep within hidden shipyards, they had built their own nightmare. A doomsday weapon forged not to defend, but to end. It was not beautiful, not polished, but it was terrifying. A weapon born from the darkest minds of Earth, tested in silence, perfected in secret. While the Varrics dreamed of glory, humans had dreamed only of destruction. Rumors of these weapons began to spread, carried by whispers among spies and travelers. The galaxy trembled at the thought of what was to come. Two monsters, one born of pride and the other born of wrath, were on a path to collide. When they did, there would be no safe place left. On Earth, the people were unshaken. Crowds cheered. As new fleets launched into the void, they sang no songs of peace, only chants of vengeance. Children painted the words, Mercy is over on walls. Soldiers carried those words into battle like banners. Humanity had become united by a single purpose, and it was not survival anymore. It was judgment. The Variks readied their ultimate weapon, gathering their last fleets around it. Their leaders told their people this would be their salvation, their final strike to bring humans to their knees. But even they felt the doubt in their hearts. They had seen what humans could do with less. What would they do now with everything at their command? In the darkness of space, the two sides prepared for the final clash. The galaxy held its breath, waiting. Some prayed the humans would stop. Some prayed the Variks would win. But most knew the truth. No matter who claimed victory, the stars themselves would never be the same again. The reckoning was here. Humanity was not done. The stars had grown quiet, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. On one side, the Variks Dominion gathered their last hope, their ultimate weapon, a warship so vast it looked like a moving fortress. Its engines burned brighter than suns. Its cannons could split planets, and its shields were said to be unbreakable. The Dominion called it their salvation, the blade that would finally cut down the humans. On the other side, the fleets of Earth waited in silence. Their lines stretched across the void, their ships scarred from endless battles, but still burning with fury. At the heart of their armada rested a shape that made even their allies tremble. The doomsday weapon humanity had built in secret. It had no name, for it needed none. It was only called the End. The battle began with a roar of light. Variks' fleet surged forward, their cannons vomiting fire across the darkness. Entire human ships vanished in bursts of flame, their crews gone. In an instant, but the humans did not waver. They pressed forward, answering with railgun fire that punched through shields, with missiles that shattered formations, with ramming attacks that turned whole cruisers into fireballs. It was no longer a clash of armies. It was war stripped bare, pure and merciless. Both sides fought as if there was no tomorrow, but there was something different in the way humans fought now. They did not fight only with weapons. They fought with rage, with memory, with the ghosts of the Outpost massacre still burning behind their eyes. Every order shouted by their admirals carried the weight of the dead. Every strike was not just against the Variks' fleet, but against the shame and pain of betrayal. The galaxy watched and understood. This was not war anymore. This was vengeance. Made flesh, the Variks unleashed their great weapon at last. The fortress ship moved into the center of the battle, its shadow swallowing entire fleets. It fired a beam of energy that ripped through 3 human warships in a single breath. Alien commanders cheered, believing they had turned the tide. But the humans only adjusted their course. The doomsday weapon at the heart of their fleet awakened, its engines humming with a sound that shook even the void. It did not fire quickly, but slowly, like a beast drawing in its breath. And then it unleashed a storm that no one had ever seen. The human weapon did not send one beam, but thousands. Streams of burning light tore across space, splitting ships in half, melting shields, turning the proud Variks fortress into a wounded giant. Its armor cracked, its cannons silenced one by one. Still the Variks fought. Still they tried to push forward, but it was no use. Humanity had built their weapon not for war, but for ending wars. For the first time, the Dominion saw what true fear looked like. As the fortress began to fall apart, human marines stormed into its wreckage. They did not move with hesitation. They carved a path through its steel halls, fire at their backs, blades in their hands. The Variks soldiers, broken and panicked, dropped their weapons, begging to be spared. But the Marines did not answer. Their boots crushed the flags of the Dominion. Their rifles spoke louder than words. No mercy, no forgiveness, only the end. When the fortress finally exploded, the shockwave rolled across space, scattering debris like ashes on the wind. Silence followed, a silence so deep it seemed to swallow the stars themselves. The Variks Dominion, once feared and mighty, was no more. Their fleets had burned, their worlds lay in ruins, their people scattered and broken. Humanity stood victorious, but it was not the victory of celebration. It was the victory of cold steel, of fire that had burned too long to be put out, across. The galaxy, alien eyes watched in horror. Entire species whispered the same words. Do not cross Earth. Do not test them. Do not awaken them again. They had seen what happened when humans unleashed their wrath. They had seen what it meant when a death world rose in anger. No one would ever forget. On Earth, the people did not cheer. They did not hold parades or wave banners. They looked at the stars with hard eyes, knowing what they had become. They had set fire to an empire, and in doing so had changed themselves. The word mercy was gone. In its place stood something colder, something the galaxy would never forget. A single alien survivor, drifting among the ruins, sent a final transmission before his ship went dark. His voice was weak, filled with fear, but his words were clear. We thought we knew hell, he whispered. Then we met the humans.